Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to a brand new week of Date Forever. In this episode, we're going to be exploring the topic of relationship attachment styles. Things we're going to explore are the three main styles of attachment, the importance and survival nature of attachment being in our childhood, and how attachment styles show up in our adult relationships with people around us and our romantic partner. But before we get into it, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
Ooh, I know that this was mine last week, but the thing that's been fueling me up the most is around humming household. And I think it's probably just the awareness that we've been spending so much extra time at home, more than we have been ever.
Yeah.
So we've been making some really good changes around home, and we had a win at IKEA and I got a couple of new indoor plants, which if anyone has seen my gram, I love my indoor plants. Yeah, but I just think every one of those little changes that we make seems to be making just a couple of things easier and easier week on week, and it's just creating this really nice layering effect.
Yeah, and I think some of those things that we've changed, you don't actually realize how much better it can be until you've changed it.
Yeah, even just simple stuff like the way that we're stacking stuff and storing stuff in our fridge, like just a couple of extra containers to help make that work a little bit better. And it's like, oh, okay, that could be easier than how we were doing it.
Yeah, and a few extra compartments in cupboards and a few extra storage bits and pieces around the place to make stuff so much easier to access.
Yeah, and the big one was like our bedroom, just our my dresser with fragrances and vitamins and jewelry, and there was just I didn't really have a good system, and now we've got a new piece of furniture that's kind of helped sort all of that out, and it's just, yeah, it's really nice.
Leveling up.
Yeah.
So my fuel up for this week is tied back to the date which Sammy organised for us on the weekend. And quite often on a weekend, we'll be at home and we'll be making incredible brunch, and we'll be like, oh, why would we ever go out for brunch? Because this is just freaking amazing.
$25 bacon and egg brekkie. No way.
Thanks. But my fuel up is complete opposite to that. So Sammy did take us out for brunch, and it was so nice being out and interacting with other people and having some delicious breakfast or brunch that we wouldn't normally make at home, or that was just a bit different to what we would normally do. And those
Bloody Marys were really good.
Oh, yeah. So that's my fuel up. It was, so nice to get back out into the world and to try some new things.
Yeah, and it was really nice. I know that we always tend to have better. No, I shouldn't say better. We tend to have different conversations when we're not at home.
Yeah, we do.
So it was really nice to have a date out, and we took the day. So yeah, it was really nice.
So let's introduce our guest.
Today we're welcoming Janet Henegan. She is a gentle and compassionate therapist who works with couples and individuals to keep their relationship positive and improve communication based on what's best for the couple. Welcome to the show, Janet.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, so the conversation that we want to have with you today is kind of two main things. Is one, something that we know that you specialize in your therapy of attachment styles. And then the second part of the conversation is what you've seen work for couples that you've worked with. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's where we start. What are attachment styles?
Okay. Look, attachment is universal. It's across all people, across all genders. Our need for love is biologically programmed into our psyche. And so it's really, really important to understand where attachment comes from. It's one of the most innate drivers for survival. It's like needing food, needing water, needing sleep. There's no such thing as no attachment. Attachment always happens. It's just the quality of your attachment So I guess your first attachment relationship, your first relationship is between mother and child or mother and caregiver. And depending on the quality of that relationship, the attachment is either deemed to be called something that's secure, or there are 3 different styles of insecure attachment. And what happens with the mum and the baby or the caretaker is that the baby has a need that needs to be attended to, and the mother responds in a good enough, not a perfect way, but in a good enough way that becomes predictable. So the baby or the person that grows up with a particular attachment style then knows that their needs will be attended to in a secure way. What happens is, for some reason, if the baby cries and is not attended to in the right way or often or predictably enough, is that they develop a different attachment style. When looking at attachment styles in babies, we look at 4 different styles, which are secure, an insecure avoidant style, or an insecure anxious style, or a very disorganized style. And I guess it doesn't really matter what the names are. For me, it's really important as adults that we understand that our attachment style is either secure and we have a secure base to go to, or that it is insecure. What happens is you're hungry, you call your mum, she comes, and you feel that that's predictable. For some kids, their mums are depressed or ill, or they have some time apart, which makes them feel that people are not always available for them. That style becomes your blueprint, and it's hardwired into your brain in your first year of life. That's your working model. That's how you see all your future relationships. So we know we can change that. An adult relationship can change insecure style.
So really, we all, as human beings, we've all got a desire to connect and attach with other human beings. And our attachment style is the way that we, I guess, default to seeking that attachment.
Yeah. So our default style is not always conscious to us. It's maybe unconscious sometimes. We need our partner, a good friend, to sort of point out what we're doing. But, there's been a lot of thought for a long time that maybe women more than men need more of an emotional connection. And I think it's really important that we say that we all need it. We need it to survive. Now, does that mean you need a partner throughout your life? Absolutely not. But you do need something that we call a secure base. You need to know that if you fall, someone will catch you. That can be a friend, that can be a sibling, and hopefully in your partnership, that's your partner.
Yeah. So my understanding is that there has been a number of studies done in this area around attachment and it actually being a vital thing for people's development and things like that too. If that attachment isn't there, that it does actually affect especially younger people.
Absolutely. It affects your health. It also, in terms of the research, and Bowlby, which is the first person who started talking about attachment, said that very much you make the best use of your talents. You do best in life if you have someone standing behind you knowing that they'll catch you, so that you can only really achieve in every aspect of your life if you know that someone's behind you. So, that sort of A-type personalities who feel that they're independent all have quite a secure base. You can see how people started in life when you see how much they achieve later in life, if that makes sense.
Okay, so we kind of get that blueprint of our attachment style in that first year of life. And then I assume that it can be influenced by our experiences and the way that we've lived every year after that first year of life. So you mentioned that there were 4 kind of primary different attachment styles. Can you maybe give us the characteristics of each of them?
Yeah, I guess what I really think would be useful is there's a lovely couple therapist in the States called Stan Tatkin. He writes about Wired for dating, Wired for love, which is sort of really looking at the biological side of things so that you can learn your style. And he actually only talks about 3 styles, and he talks about it in a very sort of nautical way. He talks about anchors, islands, and waves. So your anchors are what I call in the baby sort of a very secure attachment. Your style of being, if you're an anchor, is that you're easygoing, you're not worried about being abandoned or losing your sense of autonomy. You're normally collaborative, cooperative. You don't mind maintaining close relationships for long periods of time. And because you've had a really secure base, you feel good about yourself, you feel lovable, you feel able to love, but you're also not worried about becoming too dependent. You kind of know that dependence leads to autonomy. So there's that sort of built-in ability to trust that relationships will be there for you, that you're confident other people will be there for you, which is, if you partner with another person with a sort of anchor style of attachment, you've really hit the jackpot. And it's like really, really hard to find two solid people together, because sometimes it's not only your first relationship with your mother or caretaker, but it may be a previous sort of partner relationship where things go wrong and you start to feel a little bit insecure. More likely that you sometimes have one anchor and one island or wave. Islands actually fit in with the second style in childhood, which is your insecure, avoidant type of attachment. Islands really don't like any drama, they don't like any conflict, that they much happier sort of being withdrawn, being a little bit secretive. They don't really want their partner to sort of come too much into their life. They like to have a little bit of mystery there, which can be fun, but it makes the partner feel neglected. If you partner with an island, then you feel very, very much a little bit left out. Sometimes you think that your partner's selfish, or sometimes you feel that a little bit antisocial, but they really avoid getting close because it feels uncomfortable. They'll pull away a lot. They're the kind of people who say, I can do it myself. Don't help me. I've got this. And sometimes a bit dismissive, but that really upsets them. So even though they're independent, mostly sort of looking after themselves, right in the beginning, I was saying we're all hardwired for connections. They miss out on connection. They sort of angry with themselves around that.
So that might be like the characteristics of somebody who's been in a long-term relationship, but one party still likes to leave question marks about various areas of their life.
Absolutely. So, or doesn't feel safe enough to talk about it, or is kind of very dismissive or cold or aloof. The one party may be sort of really trying to get to know you, and the other party is kind of like, what's the point? So like stay back a bit about that. What the sort of fear underneath that is that they won't be wanted. And when we say underneath, that's the unconscious thing. No one walks around saying, no one wants me. It kind of gets into your sort of blueprint or your map.
So that's our anchors and our islands. What about our waves?
Okay, so our waves are really, they deeply desire connection with a partner. They're normally very warm. They're normally very generous. They're normally very passionate. They're very clingy. But then they ride that wave and can be quite distant as well. So a partner of someone who sort of relates as a wave will be much more like riding a wave, like riding a roller coaster. What's happening today? Are they going to be close? Are they going to be distant? Am I going to be in trouble? Is there going to be this like really hot passion, or is there going to be this distance? The partners worry because sometimes someone who's this kind of personality, which is sort of anxiously preoccupied with the relationship, behaves in sort of distancing ways on some days and can be very warm on other days. So they deeply want a truly intimate relationship. And sometimes we see that in the childhood of someone who works in a style of the waves, that they had to look after their parent, they've had a sick parent, there's been a bit of drug abuse, there's been a bit of other anxiety or dependency, and they excessively worry about the other people in their lives. They worry about their partner being okay, they worry that their partner doesn't care enough. So there's a lot of worry, there's an excessive need for approval, which is more clingy than otherwise. There can be a real need for jealousy, tell me where you are, what have you been doing, that kind of thing. The way these play out in your relationships may surprise you, because initially, very much because our biology is hardwired for connecting, when you start a relationship, most people manage the connection for quite a while. And then as time progresses, some of the styles come out, if that makes sense.
So you kind of mentioned that, that there's these three main attachment styles. Does society kind of work out that it's 33%, 33%, 33%, or is there an attachment style that's more common for the majority of people?
I think that there is a hope that the majority of people are securely attached, and I think 50 to 60%.
Yeah,
I can't work out ballpark. I know someone's research is, I just don't know if the figures are right, because that first relationship, your first loving relationship where you sort of gaze into your mum's eyes, that first sort of love affair is normally predictable enough. Mostly people start out in a secure space, but then sometimes something happens along the way. And also you may be a little bit of mostly secure, but then you get triggered by something along the way, and that your default position goes to a little bit of an island or a wave, or anxious, or preoccupied. Mostly people in relationship manage to keep it secure most of the time.
So my understanding is that within relationships, there's kind of some common themes about like the two partners in a relationship and what styles they'll have. Like quite often there'll be like one secure person, and then they're able to kind of stabilize an avoiding or an anxious person. But when you kind of have an avoiding or an anxious person like in a relationship together, they'll often like self-fulfilling prophecy that one person avoids and triggers the other person, and it just sort of snowballs essentially.
Essentially, it's very, very hard it's almost a miracle if two avoidant styles get together, because someone has to take the lead. And if you're both avoiding, it doesn't work. So there's normally a mix of styles. Yeah. There's normally someone who's a little bit more anxious, but then sometimes one partner carries the anxiety in the relationship. And then you can like kind of say, well, Nathan's the more anxious one. I'm cool with everything. But, you both feel that anxiety, but you can put it on to someone.
So what happens when somebody more intimately knows their own attachment style?
So let's talk about your own first. So sort of really knowing your history and knowing what pushes your buttons is really useful. Some people feel that you should kind of put that out there right in the beginning and say, what, that first drink, that first cup of coffee, I'm a little bit anxious about this, or I've had some sort of difficult relationships in the past. So if I seem a bit dismissive, give me a go. It's really, really wonderful if people can put that out there right at the beginning. But you need to be really vulnerable, and you need to know that the person receiving that information is not going to use it against you and use it for good. Really, when we get to know each other, we know each other so well that we know exactly what to do to push each other's buttons, but we know people's vulnerabilities. And I think if someone shares their vulnerability with you, that you hold it like that preciousness that it is. If someone is so real with you that they can say, this is who I am and this is how I feel, that it's honored, because that's one of the ways that you start to heal a bad attachment. In terms of a relationship, in the same way as that very first relationship, which is mother and child, I keep coming back to this because it's the same experience with every relationship. When you first meet your partner and you just feel that beautiful sensation in your body, which is all your hormones going, you're kind of very tuned in to everything she says, every gesture. You're really comfortable gazing into each other's eyes, not saying very much, but just really, really tuning in. And you can speak to, and I'm sure you do because you speak to lots of couples, but you can say to them, what were the first things you said to each other? How was that first conversation? 2 years later, they can't remember what you said in the morning, but that very intense initial falling in love, which, as I said, is biological. You really pay a lot of attention. So you're very, very, very tuned in. So you can start to see some of the insecurities or some of the attachment fears right in the beginning. But then it settles into something a bit more normal, something a bit easier. Eventually, you've got to get up and go to work and do all the things that you sort of need to do in your relationship. And what happens is that your brain starts taking shortcuts. You forget to gaze into each other's eyes. And I know you guys talk a lot about dating forever, which is about keeping that going. But you can settle into something a little bit more automatic. You sort of slide a little bit apart and then come back together. And there's this sort of going out in the world, coming back together, which people who have a very secure attachment can manage really, really well. They know that there'll be dependence, there'll be autonomy, and there'll be that beautiful dance that you do of coming in and going out. But for people who have a little bit of a disorganized or an insecure attachment, they start to panic, because the sort of partner going off and thinking about other things just puts them into, am I lovable? Am I acceptable? All those things that gets triggered from past experiences. And there's kind of a loss of safety and security, and some of the testing out, some of the bids for connection, which are really, really irritating, are just saying, let me test if you're still there for me. So in the same way as a sort of 2-year-old would have a tantrum, and Mum will say, yeah, you're behaving very badly, but I still love you, I'm still here for you, all that kind of thing. The adult who not really got a secure attachment may unconsciously be having a little tantrum and kind of be saying, where are you? What's going on? You never listen to me, you're not in tune with me. And they might start to feel disconnected. And then the more disconnected a person feels, the more they're going to try and get the person back in ways that sometimes are a little bit unhealthy.
So it might be like incessant text messaging or calling or intentionally acting hostile, any of those kind of things.
Oh, absolutely. The more you think, your partner's not available, the more you might send a message. You might, say, where are you? What time will you be home? All those kinds of things. The more the other person's going to think, well, why bother? Why were you late? I'm not going to bother anymore because I'm always going to get yelled at. What's the point? And then there'll be little other insecurities. And the most famous one, I mean, this is all of us, is like, why are you looking at me like that? I'm not looking at you in any way. Why are you getting angry? I'm not getting angry. That sort of spiral of, am I lovable? And if you can see that as a sort of bid for connection and you're in your right mind at the time, if you're feeling like a secure anchor, you can very much say, hey, are you okay? We're still good. I mean, the classic one, and I always think of this one, is the one where someone says, how do I look in this outfit? And the partner thinks, oh my goodness, they really want to start a fight, because that's what that sounds like to your partner, that you're starting a fight. But if the partner is really in tune with you and goes back to that tuning in right from the beginning, your partner might say, yeah, you're probably anxious about seeing my family. They can be really judgy. How about just knowing that I've got your back? And sort of, if your partner can understand what lies below the insecurity, then you're not going to start a fight. Conflict, unfortunately or fortunately, is going to happen all the time. Misunderstandings in relationships are going to happen endlessly. But the more secure you feel in your relationship, the better you can handle it. Research has shown that relationships don't fail because there's an increase of conflict. Relationships start to fail when there's a decrease of affection and emotional responsiveness. So not being able to respond from a place of meeting the other person where they are emotionally.
So if we start to observe, I guess, some of these insecure attachment styles in ourselves, how do we then actually go about changing them?
Yeah. Look, I think that there's a real ability to sort of create a more anchored relationship. It's about recognizing those bids for connection. What is your partner trying to say? Secure, functioning couples are really couples who kind of prioritize their relationship. They're not afraid to talk about their feelings. They're able to be vulnerable in front of each other. They're able to forgive. They're able to have a close connection. What happens is that for a lot of people, they feel disconnected, and the disconnection makes them more insecure. And we all feel disconnected after that initial sort of what we call the honeymoon stage or the first dating stage, where people actually have to, as I say, get on with their lives, sort of really get to know each other, really understanding your partner and knowing what they want, talking about their interests, talking about their hopes and dreams, building them up, looking for ways to come closer and being vulnerable, but also knowing that if you have a sort of bid for connection that might backfire in some way. I work with a couple who she'd keep going up to him and sort of, putting her hand on his shoulder, or when they were out in public, sort of holding his hand. And because his style was very much quite anxious and unconditional, he'd kind of think, what does she want? And say to her, what do you want? And she'd say, no, I just want to be close to you. And he'd say, no, but what else do you want? Why are you touching me? And she'd say, well, I just want to touch you. And he couldn't actually believe that. So, instead of sort of taking that vulnerability and helping him repair it, sometimes they can start to feel a little insecure themselves. So then you sort of spiral the insecurity down. So when sort of talking to people about their connections, then we can sort of have conversations about, I love you unconditionally. It's not, I don't want to touch you to get something out of you. The touching is what I'm getting, being physically close. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times you guys can do it yourself, but sometimes you need a third party to say, let's look at the spiral of going into something negative and just stop that in its tracks, or let's look at the spiral of, moving it into something positive and more open. And if you promise openness, then you need to respect what's given to you. Elaine de Botton, who talks about love as well, always says, treat your partner like a child. Be as kind and as forgiving as you would to a tiny infant. If a tiny infant throws their toys at you, you don't say, I hate you back. You kind of go along with that. You soothe them. You kind of think, well, what lies beneath that tantrum? What's the fear? And it's normally fear under the anger for all of us, because connection is so important, particularly now when we've all been a bit locked up and disconnected from our friends. We've got to just sort of really keep this going.
So is there something that you would recommend for couples to do, whether it's something related to attachment styles or something else, I guess, to get to know each other a bit better? Is there a tool or something that you would recommend for couples?
There's an app that the Gottman Institute have on the phone called Gottman Card Decks, which helps you with questions about love maps. It's freely available, and they also sort of talk about intimacy. There are a whole lot of different cards that are conversation starters, which is great. Also, the Stan Tatkin books on Wired for Love give a lot of exercises that you can do to understand your style and sort of work towards helping develop a sort of anchored relationship, because that's the goal, that both people feel secure, that they both feel that they have each other's back and that there's trust.
So Janet, this has been really lovely. What I'd love to know is, through your work with couples, is there a daily or a weekly practice that you would recommend for people to engage in or strengthen an area of their relationship so that it can stay fueled up?
Yeah, I guess is sort of coming at your partner with the best intention of giving them the benefit of the doubt, always looking beyond and tuning in. You drive down the road and you see couples who are sitting in the car at the lights and they're both looking out their opposite windows and not looking at each other. And I think even when you have a conversation, stop, get away from the kitchen desk, gaze into each other's eyes again, because it's very, very hard to misinterpret things when you're looking at each other. Make sure that you sort of reach out to each other in ways, even in a difficult time when you're having conflict, if you just hold your partner's hand, it kind of subdues all that anxiety, because you are going to have conflict. You've just got to manage that well.
So, Janet, thank you so much for joining us. I know that obviously you do incredible work with couples and individuals. And a big part of what Nathan and I are doing with the Fuel Collective is talking about, creating a life that you love, dating yourself and your special someone forever, but also being the change and taking accountability for what you have influence over, both in your own life, but also in the greater world. So to say thank you for joining us today, We've provided a school in Zambia with 100 days of clean water. We've done this by contributing to a project where they built a borehole and hand pump. The school that this is at is in rural Zambia, and it's got about 1,000 students. It's particularly impactful for girls because they don't have to go off and fetch water. They can actually attend school. So this project is looked after by Builder International, and we've done it via our partnership with Buy One, Give One. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Thank you. That's great.
Not a problem. So, Janet, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about your work and what you do, how should they connect?
Yeah, I have a website, janethenegan.com, which is all one word, and people can get me that way. I'm in Sydney. I work in Leichhardt and on the North Shore in Killara, so really happy to have people give me a call as well, connect in that way.
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.